Greetings, you children out there. Do you know a lot about basketball? Then you know why basketball players can't take a vacation. They'd be called for traveling. I like to begin my talks with a humorous comment, but I also want to mention that this talk is being given in June of 2023, and I really do hope that all of you, whether you're Americans or wherever you may be hearing this, that you would be praying for my country, for America at this time. We are really in a crisis stage here, and we do need prayers that things can work out, mercifully for this country. Anyway, I want to give a shout out to, I guess it's Charles, Iowa, right? And give a shout out to Northern California, and we may have a listener in South Africa or maybe more. So wherever you're listening, I hope that this message will benefit you. I wanted to cover something encouraging today, but I begin with a very sobering account of God's people and how at times they suffer torture and martyrdom. And one statement in Hebrews 11:37, it says that they were stoned, they were sawn in two, were tempted, were slain with the sword, they wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented. And of course, it talks about ultimately the wonderful reward they're going to have. But regarding being sawn in two, according to Jewish tradition, this may be how Isaiah was martyred. But in any case, that's what they've done to his book. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls include the scroll of Isaiah, the one scroll of the book of Isaiah. But if you go to a university and take a course on Isaiah, they'll probably be Proto-Isaiah, the first 39 chapters. Then there'll be Deutero-Isaiah, 40 to 55, and Trito-Isaiah, 56 to 66. But the New Testament speaks of Isaiah. And for example, in John 12, I'm going to jump in here in verse 37. John 12. But although he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him, that the word of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spoke. Lord, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Now that's coming from Isaiah 53. Therefore, they could not believe, because Isaiah said again, he has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they should see with their eyes, lest they should understand with their hearts, and turn so that I would heal them. These things Isaiah said when he saw his glory and spoke of him. That's in the 6th chapter of Isaiah. So you see, Isaiah 53, Isaiah 6, it's the book of Isaiah. Now Isaiah is a prophecy, but it's prophecy, yes, but prophecy is history written in advance, and some of Isaiah is history written after the fact. And I want to cover a chapter of Isaiah that covers history, which you'll also find in 2 Chronicles and in 2 Kings. But I want to go to Isaiah, the 38th chapter. And I call this talk a royal response to a miracle. As I said, I want to cover something encouraging today, and the God who does miracles in the Bible is the same God who does miracles today, and the same God who could do a miracle for you or for me. Isaiah 38 speaks about Hezekiah. Now, Hezekiah led a spiritual revival of his people. And there were some trials in his day, but God intervened very dramatically for Judah, the southern kingdom, in the days of Hezekiah. And there's, as I said, a lot of background on Hezekiah in 2 Chronicles and in 2 Kings. But after God delivered Jerusalem from an Assyrian invasion miraculously, now we have the fact that now Hezekiah's life was coming to an end. Isaiah 38. In those days Hezekiah was sick and near death, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, went to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. Then Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed to the Lord. He did not want to die. And said, Remember now, O Lord, I pray, how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart, and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. And the word of the Lord came to Isaiah, saying, Go and tell Hezekiah, Thus says the Lord, the God of David your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Surely I will add to your days 15 years. So he said, all right, you want to live longer, I'll give you 15 more years. He even gave him a number of years. It's interesting that he warned him ahead of time he was going to die, and that can be, I guess, for some people a negative thing, but it can also be a positive thing. You can make sure everything's in place, everything's in order for your family and your country and so on. But now we had 15 more years, so that's a good bit of time. And again, it means that when he comes to that 15th year, he knows once again, all right, I've got to set things in order because this is it. All right. But he gave him 15 more years. I will deliver you in this city from the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city. And this is the sign to you from the Lord that the Lord will do this thing which he has spoken. Behold, I will bring the shadow on the sundial, which has gone down with the sun on the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backward. And the word here is for degrees is ma'alot, or ascensions. So in other words, the degrees, it normally it normally would go the degrees can go up. So that's at least that was the term used for the degrees. It's something that, of course, can go up or go down, but the characteristic that was used to call the degrees was ma'alot, coming from the word to ascend. Behold, I will bring the shadow on the sundial, which has gone down with the sun on the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backward. So the sun returned 10 degrees on the dial by which it had gone down. So here the sun is setting, and yet the degrees are going backward, as if there's more sun. So I guess that's why. I guess it would be going more and more, going up as the sun declines, and backward means there's more sun. So this was, of course, a dramatic miracle. Now that doesn't mean that all the laws of the universe were suspended. It means that in that area, as people's perception was what it was, God can do that. I believe if you look at the plague of darkness, I think there were 3 days of darkness, very deep darkness, where you'll be afraid to move. But I believe you'll see that in Goshen, that wasn't the case. God has that power to do that. So in that area, that's what they saw. And doesn't necessarily, as I say, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of nature was set awry, for this. But this is what they perceived in their part of the, in that city, in that place, and it was certainly a miracle. And it was very impressive, obviously, and it was a sign to Ahaz. And if you look at 2 Chronicles and 2 Kings, there's more background about the significance of the sign, so you can read up on that on your own. This is the writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, when he had been sick and had recovered from his sickness. So he actually had a prayer like a psalm regarding his recovery. I said, in the prime of my life I shall go down to the gates of Sheol, the poetic name for the abode of the dead, Hades, in the Americanized Greek. I am deprived of the remainder of my years. I said, I shall not see Yah, the eternal, Yah, and then Yahweh is the capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. I shall not see Yah, the Lord in the land of the living. I shall observe man no more among the inhabitants of the world. My lifespan is gone, taken from me like a shepherd's tent. I have cut off my life like a weaver. He cuts me off from the loom. From day until night you make an end of me. I have considered until morning like a lion. So a lion normally is out at night and then sleeps during the day. I have considered until morning like a lion, so he breaks all my bones. From day until night you make an end of me. So he was obviously very upset about what was going to happen. And now he's so excited he has 15 more years. Like a crane or a swallow, so I chattered. I mourned like a dove. My eyes fail from looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Undertake for me. What shall I say? He has both spoken to me and he himself has done it. I shall walk carefully all my years in the bitterness of my soul. So he's still talking about the upset, and now he's getting into the positive side. O Lord, by these things men live, and in all these things is the life of my spirit. So you will restore me and make me live. Indeed, it was for my own peace that I had great bitterness, but you have done lovingly, delivered my soul from the pit of corruption. You have cast all my sins behind your back, for Sheol cannot thank you. Death cannot praise you. Those who go down to the pit cannot hope for your truth, right? When you're dead, you're dead. When you're alive, you're alive. And that's why we depend upon the resurrection for eternal life. The living man, he shall praise you. As I do this day, the Father shall make known your truth to the children. The Lord was ready to save me. Therefore we will sing my songs with stringed instruments all the days of our life in the house of the Lord. So this seems to indicate that he's doing this as kind of a model, that he's going to compose psalms in honor of this occasion, or make a collection of psalms in honor of this occasion. Now Isaiah had said, let them take a lump of figs and apply it as a poultice on the boil, and he shall recover. This is giving more background on what happened. And Hezekiah had said, what is the sign that I shall go up to the house of the Lord? And of course the sign is covered earlier. So this gives some, just kind of retrospective information. So it has been suggested that the section of Psalms that we have called the songs of degrees, the Shirei HaMa'alot, the songs of degrees, that collection, it has been suggested by some commentators that is related to this miracle that God did for Hezekiah. So let's call it a royal response to a miracle. That is speculative, but it's interesting speculation. These songs of degrees, songs of ascents, and there are 10 of them with no author. So maybe they are authored by Hezekiah. On the other hand, he also collected other psalms by other authors and put them in the collection so that you would have 15 altogether. So the 10 by Hezekiah, or the anonymous ones, they would be in honor of the 10 degrees that the sundial went backward. But the 15 altogether are in honor of the 15 years given to Hezekiah. Now, there are other uses for these songs of degrees and reasons given for them. One idea is that there were 15 steps between the court of the women and the court of the Israelite men, and the priests would go up and down these 15 steps, and so they had 15 psalms, but the 15 steps could have been, built at a later time as Herod embellished the temple, in corresponding to these 15 psalms. Another very popular idea, which does fit, is that these are songs of ascents. They're songs of degrees, but they're songs, as I said, of ascents. They're based on the root Allah, to go up. And we have the word aliyah, ascent. As when people migrate to Israel, that's called the aliyah, going up. And so we have the songs of ascents. So they are associated with pilgrims going to Jerusalem. You go up to Jerusalem, both geographically and spiritually. You go up to Jerusalem. And so these psalms would be recited by pilgrims on their way to the pilgrimage festivals, and that also fits. It doesn't take away from the other possibility. It's another use that they have been put to, and probably designed ahead of time. Now, I'll give you a good project to work on. The next festival season is in the autumn, and it begins with the Festival of Trumpets. I would recommend that you read Psalm 120 on the Festival of Trumpets, and then each day read another one of those Psalms. On the Day of Atonement, read Psalm 129, and then on the first night of the Festival of Tabernacles, read Psalm 134. And you'll see how it all ties in. Now, one Bible scholar whom I greatly respect, he died in 2004, and he was one of my great teachers. He also said there was a prophetic significance to these psalms. He believed that these were songs of ascent, and they're talking about a time after the return of Jesus Christ, as we enter the millennium and things get better and better, more and more spiritual as Jesus Christ extends his reign over the world. And he believed these 15 psalms correspond to the first 15 years of the millennium, which is an interesting idea. And I may get into that later. I wanted to cover some of these psalms tonight, 4 of them if I have time. And those are the ones that are the psalms attributed to David as the author. So let's go to this section of the songs of ascents, or the songs of degrees, the Shirei HaMa'alot. And Psalm 120 does logically fit after Psalm 119. It does fit if you look at the verses of Psalm 119 as you get towards the end, and you get to Psalm 120. It does fit. But these are 15 psalms, Psalm 120 through Psalm 134. And the way they're organized, these 15, is that there are 2 parts, 7 in one part, 7 in another, and in the middle, a song, a psalm by Solomon. It's the only one by Solomon, and that's right in the middle. And then on each side of the songs of the Psalm of Solomon, there are 2 psalms of David, there's a technical term that I rarely have seen, but it has to do with I'll check it out maybe and give it to you next week. There's a technical term when you use a word and then you repeat it and for emphasis, like to you I say this, and to you I say another, and to you I say yet a third thing. So I'm repeating to you, to you, to you. And that is a characteristic of these psalms. Another characteristic of these psalms is when you repeat something, but then you go further with it. So it's like a stair-like parallelism, where you say something, you repeat it, but then you go further. And so that way you're also ascending. In other words, the style of the psalms is ascending, getting more and more intense. Hope that makes sense to you. And there's a lot of numerical patterns working in these psalms. There's 15 of them, and it's at 5 groups of 3. And the first psalm talks of distress, one commentator points out, and the second, you're looking to God for deliverance, looking to the eternal, YHWH, and then the Lord, capital L, capital R, capital R, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. And then also the third then is peace and blessing from Zion, associated with Zion. These psalms are pointing to Zion. As I said, they are pilgrimage psalms, focusing on the capital of the nation of Israel, the spiritual center and cultural center where the temple was, and so on, where the monarch had his palace. And then, of course, in the future, the spiritual significance of that, which I'll get to momentarily. But we have, in effect, 5 groups of 3, and we have 3 psalms in the second section that have 3 verses each. So there's a lot of patterns working here. And speaking about ascending, the 3rd and 5th psalms in the first half are Davidic, and then you move up one. The 4th and 6th psalms in the second section are Davidic. And as I said, it points to Zion. And Zion, of course, anciently was the center of God's religion, you could say. It's more than religion, it's a whole way of life, of course. But let's say God's religion was centered in Jerusalem. and will be again. Jerusalem will be the capital of the world under Jesus Christ. But there's also the significance spiritually of Zion, and the fact that we ministers are ambassadors for Jesus Christ, 2 Corinthians 5:20. And so the church, in effect, is an extension of the heavenly Jerusalem. So spiritually speaking, Jerusalem is a type of the church, our mother, the church. And heaven, there's a heavenly Jerusalem. I want to go to Galatians 4. Am I in Galatians 4? Okay. And Galatians 4, in verse 26, but the Jerusalem above is free, which is the mother of us all. So, if you're under the old covenant, you are stuck, because you have sinned, and the wages of sin is death. But under the new covenant, there's redemption through Jesus Christ and ultimate salvation under the new covenant. And so the Jerusalem above is free, which is the mother of us all. So, as I said, there's a heavenly Jerusalem. And so when you read about Zion here, you can also think in terms of the heavenly Jerusalem, and you can think in terms of the church as representing the heavenly Jerusalem. For example, in Hebrews 11, again, I was there earlier. There's a great reward for the faithful. And in verse 10, talking about Abraham and how he wandered in Canaan. But then it says in verse 10, for he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. So he was wandering around in Canaan, living in tents, but he was looking forward to that city whose builder and maker is God. And to get to the end of the story, we have the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven to the earth, and the conclusion of history is when this new Jerusalem comes, and it's discussed at length in Revelation 21. But I want to go to the beginning of Revelation 21, in verse 2. And then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them. So he, in effect, comes down to our level in that sense. By that time, there will be spirit beings. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. So that's some background, and so I want to go now to the third of these Psalms, which is the first one that's said to be of David, Psalm 122, a song of ascents of David. I was glad when they said to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet have been standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together, so well designed, well organized. Where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to the testimony of Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. For thrones are set there for judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. So yes, there it is, and there are people doing that. And just recently, there were people who spent 3 weeks, in effect, doing that. But it's also beyond that. As I said, there's a spiritual meaning here to pray for the church. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. God's church is like the moon. Jesus Christ is compared to the sun in Psalm 84 and in Malachi 4. And Jesus Christ is not only the Son of God, but we can make a play on in English. He's also symbolized by the S-U-N. And the church is symbolized by the moon. We reflect the light of the sun. And the moon goes through phases. Sometimes the moon is barely visible, and then sometimes it's full. And that's the way the church has been through history. Now eventually the moon turns to blood which is symbolic of the martyrdom of the saints. That happens before the second coming of Christ. And we have darkness symbolizing that the truth of Jesus Christ is being hindered from the world. That's the symbolism of the signs you see in talked about. Peter talks about them on Pentecost in Acts 2. Joel talks about them, and ultimately they're fulfilled before the second coming of Christ. So, as I said, the moon turns to blood as symbolic of the martyrdom of the saints. So, as I said, we're like the moon, the church, and we have our phases, and the church has its ups and downs, and so just as Jerusalem needs prayer, so does the church. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brethren and companions, I will now say, peace be within you. So we do pray, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem. That's ultimately where God's going to set up his capital as Jesus Christ returns. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good. And as I said, it can apply spiritually to the church. I want to go to one more psalm, and it has some important. There's an important lesson there, and that would be this is the 123rd. So I'm sorry, this is the 122nd. The 124th is the next Davidic psalm, a song of ascents of David. So as I said, this is a section of psalms that are certainly you can read as a section, and I would certainly recommend it from the Festival of Trumpets to the first night of the Festival of Tabernacles as a project to read each day one of these psalms. You'll find it very illuminating. I want to go to Psalm 124, a song of ascents of David, and this is talking about distress here. If it had not a song of ascents of David, so we have 120, 121, 122, then we have 123 and 124. And 124 is where 123 you're in distress, and then 124 you're looking to God for deliverance. A song of ascents of David. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, they would have swallowed us alive when their wrath was kindled against us. So this is talking about deliverance coming from God, and it's the fifth. Fifth of these psalms. Now, according to that great Bible scholar, one of my teachers, if this is a prophecy of the millennium, we're into now the 5th year of the millennium. Christ has established his rule in the Middle East, but there may be other parts of the world where he has not yet established his rule. And this is why early in the millennium, you have the invasion of the Gog and Magog war. The Gog and Magog war does not occur before the coming of Jesus Christ. A lot of prophecy buffs are getting all excited, not in a positive way, but they're getting all excited about the possibility of this Gog and Magog war. But if you look at Ezekiel 35, 36, and then 40, 41, and so on, you see the context of Ezekiel 38 is millennial. It's after the return of Jesus Christ. Look at the context. Read shortly before and shortly after that section. And then go to Ezekiel 38:11 and see the condition of Israel at that time. First of all, the spiritual condition of Israel is quite different from what it is now. But even the physical situation in Israel is quite different from what it is now. I just want to go to Ezekiel 38 and verse 11. I know for some of you this is very basic. For others it may be shocking. So I want to go to Ezekiel 38 and verse 11. You will say, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. That's not a description of the state of Israel today. Anyway, so as I said, the Gog and Magog war comes after the second coming of Christ, and it does tie in with this psalm. This is the 5th one, so maybe 5 years into the millennium. I know that's highly speculative, but I have a lot of respect for the evangelist who brought that out. Anyway, I'm going to read the psalm. A song of ascents of David. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, let Israel now say. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, then they would have swallowed us alive. You know what happens with Gog and Magog. God intervenes dramatically and crushes them. You could read about that in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Then they would have swallowed us alive when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters would have overwhelmed us. The stream would have gone over our soul. If you look at other scriptures, waters indicate, thundering waters, like in a waterfall, indicates masses of people. The noise of a crowd of people come like an army. Okay, then the waters would have overwhelmed us. The stream would have gone over our soul. Then the swollen waters would have gone over our soul. Blessed be the Lord, who has not given us prey to their teeth. Our soul has escaped as a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken. We have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. So this may be prophetic of that final victory, which then ends the last vestige, significant vestige of rebellion against Jesus Christ. Then we have, of course, that period of the millennium. Then at the end, though, we do have another one last war to end all wars, which comes at the end of the millennium, which you can read about in Revelation 20. And then that's it. Then we have the white throne judgment period, and then we have the New Jerusalem, which, as I said, these Psalms are all pointing to Zion and pointing ultimately to that New Jerusalem. Jews over the centuries would say, the Shana Haba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. And so Christians can say, maybe not necessarily next year, but soon, in the New Jerusalem. Or I'll put it another way, looking forward to the New Jerusalem, because the New Jerusalem doesn't really come until after the Great White Throne Judgment period. But that's where history is going. It's going to that spiritual city with spirit beings inhabiting it, immortal beings inhabiting it, and God tabernacling with human beings. And what kind of environment will that be? And I want to finish there in Revelation 21. I think that these songs of ascents do point to that ultimate future where God, in effect, descends down to us, but it'll be a great ascension for us, because now we'll be in a very intimate relationship with God as we never have been before. And we share that for all eternity. In Revelation 21 and verse 4, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Then he who sat on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. So I believe these are lessons that we can derive from a royal response to a miracle. All the best to you and yours.